this has been attempted, but we looked at some 48 countries around the world, and in partnership with Oxford Economics, looked at the supply and demand for talent. Opportunities to reach 21st century heights, but in many organizations, what we see are 20th century people practices that are severely lagging. I talked about Talent 2021 and 4 major countries around the world of that, and in partnership with Oxford Economics, are transforming very looked at how they have demand and the skills that are being demanded are in fact very different. I'll share that with you in a second. There is ongoing accelerated mobility from the industrialized markets of the West and North America to reach 21st century heights, but in many organizations, we see a 20th century organizations recognizing the digital the business model going forward. And it's not just consumer-facing organizations, it's also industrialized, production-based organizations in more B2B environments. One of the most interesting things about this particular piece of research is we asked organizations in the West immigration in those markets. In the past, you had immigration closing those gaps in the 80s and 90s in the United States. That has dried up with all of the political infighting that has gone on in the United States. And you also see declining. This is our global workforce study. It covers the things that attract people to organizations, what makes them stay, retains them, and then what consistently on a sustainable basis drives the engagement and productivity. And another sort of interesting sort of change here, because in the past when we looked at what drove attraction and retention, it was things like development, it was things energy, supervision, and am I enabled in actually doing the work? Do I have the right tools? Do I have managers who sort of manage my environment well and coach me and develop me? So it's a much more encompassing, do I have the right tools? Do I have managers who sort of manage my environment well and coach me and develop me? So not just showing up for work, but when they show up for work, are they productive? Are they sort of actually present in their job? And then retention. And for the first time, you actually see a significant and very strong relationship between engagement, economic performance relative to global industry peers, and retention, which obviously makes a lot more sense than if it didn't have a relationship. So it's something to think about, you know, as you look at the productivity of your workforce, perhaps considering a measurement of employee engagement. So what is productivity? Going forward, what they need is the type of talent that might otherwise go to a Google or a Yahoo or a Microsoft. Because that credit card, whichever color one you have, whether it's black, gold, platinum, or any other precious metal, is going to be a dinosaur going forward. And in terms of what will drive their engagement. And you can see some of the major skills that are being demanded. Sure. Sorry. Tend to get a little bit animated and move around a little bit, so my apologies. And you'll see that when we look at the Middle East and Africa, some of the things, those digital business skills across multiple organizations in pursuit of growth, and I think it's particularly relevant when we look at some of the Gulf countries, where JVs and those sort of partnerships are increasingly important in pursuit of our growth opportunities. So having a workforce that is facile, that is culturally sensitive to the needs of different partners, that understands how to get to already mean that it's a physical location. How do we access the world's best talent in pursuit of the growth agenda for Saudi Arabia without specifically focusing on having that talent in this country, and instead creating a platform to access that talent wherever they might be. Reskilling. I talked about the significant improvements in education that are being made and how that's going to be empowering the supply of talent. How do we, so rethinking how and challenging how we structure work is a significant opportunity. So what does this mean for your HR functions? And I'd like to relate this to the 5 principles that John and I identified when we did our research. You know, we looked at organizations globally and we asked the question of the companies who sustain majority of decisions we make within that are made about people in companies are not made by the HR function. They're made by business leaders every day. Business leaders either engage or disengage your workforce. Boss, whatever that was called, and he had 1,000 men below him. So hierarchy is how many organizations are organized. What we're increasingly seeing is as progressive HR functions are looking to get much greater ROI, is moving more and more to the right. Because and that's what the marketing function has realized. Because we never think of our customers as being monolithic, right? Every airline pursue a customer loyalty driven strategy. So think of the Singapore Airlines of this world, or even perhaps the Emirates. What you see is a pilot role is not a role that is pivotal to the business model. It is a role where you need 100% of the talent operating at a certain minimal standard. You don't really need a superstar. Because if you think of the role of a pilot, instrumental in driving whether you come back and fly with that airline or not. Whether you keep flying for another 100,000 miles with them or switch to another airline. And so what we see is the flight attendant is absolutely pivotal. I've got one airline client that is actually going after, I don't know if you have Nordstrom's in Saudi Arabia, but Nordstrom's is a one to keep pushing. We want to differentiate individual performance. Incentives, really bad idea. Sense. The third principle I mentioned is creating integration and synergy. It's how 1 + 1 = 3. How do we have performance, an intermediate successor, and a long-term successor? On the flip side, let's say you have an accountant at that same level, and my apologies to anyone from finance who might be here, but that accountant may be fulfilling a very simple task associated with external reporting. That task maturity that I think is there for the HR function is to redefine itself beyond just the management of talent today to being the organization that actually optimizes how work gets done and be able to help the CEO and the leadership team figure out, given our growth agenda, what are the different sources of getting work done based on the risk, based on the cost, based on the constraints we have. We may not have
صناعة الموارد البشرية في المملكة العربية السعودية. أيضا بناء على ما تفضل به معالي وزير العمل في كلمته واللي ألقاها عنه دكتور فرج نائب الوزير، سنحاول أن نترجم بعض هذه التساؤلات وبعض هذه التحديات إلى واقع عملي، واسمحوا لي أن أقول أن في خلال السنتين أو العامين والنصف الماضية وزملاء من جهات أخرى شقيقة من برامج الدعم في الصندوق إلى برامج الدعم أو الآليات التي تحصل عليها المنشآت فيها. طبعا من أهم عملائنا نحن في الصندوق اليوم هو أنتم خبراء الموارد البشرية. هذه شريحة نستخدمها فقط لتذكير أنفسنا بأن ما تم عمله من بعض المبادرات الرئيسية في خلال الأعوام الثلاثة المنصرمة. أنا متأكد أن معظمكم إن لم يكن جميعكم يعرف هذه المبادرات، نطاقات وحافز وطاقات وطاقات أمنين والدعم الإضافي وغيرها. ومثل لدينا الآن في الموارد البشرية في المملكة العربية السعودية، وسأترك الحديث التفصيل لهذه المبادرات للدكتور الكريم. عندنا الإشارة أكاديمي، وهذه أيضا يوجد لدينا يعني رغبة قوية جدا، وترجمنا هذه الرغبة إلى مبادرة فعلية في أن يتولى صندوق تنمية الموارد البشرية وضع البذرة الأساسية لإنشاء أكاديمية متخصصة في صناعة الموارد البشرية، حتى نتمكن من وضع مظلة تنظيمية لمثل هذا التخصص. وبعد كده إن شاء الله نتوقع ونتأمل the existence of such a unit will ensure the right selection and development of the talented people, which will actually create business for the entity. At the end of the day, unless we put HR at الموارد البشرية يصبحوا مطورين لأعمال شركاتهم وليس فقط ممكنين لأعمال شركاتهم. أرجع وأركز على النقطة أو أعيد التذكير بالنقطة اللي ذكرتها. نحن ماذا نريد منهم في صندوق تنمية الموارد البشرية؟ ربما أسأنا في إما إدارة هذه الخيرات أو الاستفادة منها، وأسأنا حتى في الاستفادة من العامل الوافد الذي يعني نقدره حق التقدير وكل التقدير ونشكره كل الشكر بشكل علني خلال الأشهر القادمة. نحن في فترة التجربة والسوفت لانش داخل الوزارة وداخل فئات معينة، معا عبارة عن بوابة سيتم وضع جميع مسودات القرارات التي تهم أي مصلحة على هذه البوابة، ودعوة أصحاب هذه المصلحة لمناقشتها وتحديها وغربلتها
شكرا سعادة الأستاذ إبراهيم. قبل أن نستأنف إن شاء الله الجلسة الحوارية 10 دقائق تفصل من لقاء مرة أخرى بعد بريك بسيط. حياكم الله.
ايوه كيف يلا حول على الجوال. البشرية بالتعاون مع شركات العالمية. فكر بيها. بروح اشوف هذا اللي يصير الحين عليك. ما تدري انت امس دخل
نتمكن من البدء في الجلسة الحوارية. سعودة مستدامة للخطط الوظيفية. ندعو السيد جيم ماثيو مان من شركة تاور واتسون لإدارة الجلسة الحوارية، والتي تضم كل من سعادة النائب التنفيذي لمدير صندوق تنمية الموارد البشرية هدف الدكتور عبد الكريم الجيلي، والسيد عبد الهادي المنصوري رئيس الجمعية العربية لإدارة الموارد البشرية، والسيد محمد الخليفة المدير التنفيذي لشركة صدارة. نتمنى إن شاء الله أن تكون هذه الجلسة جرعة من الفائدة والتحفيز والتطوير لتحقيق أهداف هذا الملتقى.
Of sustainable, productive workforce and how we can achieve this win-win proposition where we put job seekers in productive employment and sustainable employment, and the private sector organizations see the value for that employment and can always see the impact on the bottom line, and it's not only phantom nationalization or just trying to make the numbers for Saudization. So what we want to do, I think that it also ranges from 82% to 92%. Actually, when you go to regions with more job opportunities, it becomes less, but when you go to remote regions and with less economic activity, it actually reaches 92%. And with the numbers of unemployment that we've seen from time to time, it doesn't make sense that we have unemployed. They can extract greater value from the expatriate, not because this is their actually market value, but because of the conditions and the regulation in the labor market that are making them, less expensive and so obvious for employers to drive the value out of the expat employees. Also, so the low-cost workforce prefer mobility opportunities for that job seeker. they're lacking, and there are not enough programs that we are aware of, except maybe the job placement center that HRDF is establishing with the international providers currently. What we want to achieve: human resources development and engagement and employment, and increasing the number of nationals in production. To take nationals, this will solve the issue. We think it's the whole ecosystem, the whole landscape should be full of initiatives, that each initiative will support the other, so that we can reach really an organized labor force where both nationals and expats could contribute to, and we end up with a productive economy and a GDP that meets the expectations of all the nationals and the citizens of Saudi Arabia. If we look at some of the initiatives that we're working on, both at the Ministry of Labor and HRDF, there are some geared towards labor supply, some are towards job matching and skill development, and some are employer focused. And those employer focused are things similar to ملتقات, the labor market check. Job seekers happen to require financial assistance, it will become part of the employment support more than a financial assistance, a standalone financial assistance. Also, there are special programs, just to make sure that we have upskilled the supply wherever it comes from, and also we have some support programs for students. If we look at career education, it's lacking in most of our education institutions. We would like to make sure that the students really choose the right specialty, and then or understand their capability if they're moving into a business or entrepreneurship or moving into employment. What is the employment that fits their needs and fits their preference, so that when they take that employment, they feel that this is something that they can sustain, and they can feel that they're adding value to the organization they're working for. Fairs and e-job fairs, actually, that we're conducting through these channels. We're moving into 30 JBCs also, where we can provide the job placement center services through a phone to everybody who we can't reach with a physical JBC. Also, when it comes to training and development, we're trying to touch these needs of the employers and work with them from the beginning in delivering the talent they need. There are the EBAs, the employer-driven academies. There are 2 or 3 already established, and there are also some proposals from other employers that we're looking at. There is the placement centers are also working on increasing that exposure and making sure that you get the right people, and we follow them on the job, for the first critical months of employment. When it comes to the labor demand, there are policies in place like the wage protection system and the female employment regulation that was just introduced. Also create training and employment chances in the private communication. We would like also to hear from you what you expect more from us, or talk to I have said here, but also to hear from you and your expectation and what are actually improvement opportunities that you had in your organization or the lesson learned in your organization that you think it's readily transferable to other organizations and it could actually improve, this or reaching that objective of sustainable, productive labor force. So we would like the private sector or the private sector organization to involving, consultancy firm, international consultancy firm like Towers Watson, and more importantly, hear about your experience in achieving that within your company, even if it's in one aspect of these aspects, in sourcing or training or retailing, and how we can learn from each other. Thank you very much. I look forward to the discussion, and thank you.
Dr. Karim. Excellent illustration of the practical examples of the collaboration, of the initiatives and their progression. Interesting to hear about the job matching portals, the areas that you're setting up, and also, most important, the proactive planning, knowledge and support.
Both women and men are serving our own community. You have other great initiatives that has been as well taken care of. They're going to be launched soon, and what we have seen from the history of labor or HADF, that those ideas, those dreams has been successfully implemented, and we have seen HADF, the TAPAT. So all those promises, inshallah, will reflect very positively in our society. However, I think there are target projects are missing on this morning, and I think I'm going to talk about the second question, which is very critical. The role of HR function within your organization. I think HR leaders, what I have experienced talking to them through our society, have played a very great role on implementing what would be called the best business practices brought to our organization, maybe from Towers Watson or leading organization consultants there. However, I think there are missing components that we need to address in the future of our HR discussion. The line manager within our companies, they play a major role for the success of HR organization. You want employees to be engaged. I think HR could play and enhance the development and the training program, but the expectation from the line manager to make sure that the work environment will be ready to adapt them and give them the promise to grow within the organization. I think this is between my part and I will be the remaining from the adult.
Okay, Mohammed Al-Qari from Sadara.
I just want to share with you the partner, what resources available in the kingdom, and rightly subsidy for their training from HADF. Plus the King Abdullah Scholarship was another way of getting a fresh college graduate, whether engineers, IT, when I'm talking about engineering, all the discipline, mainly in chemical, but also mechanical and electrical engineer. So there was a mix, but again, there is experience workforce. We need to attract them, and this is where we partner with Towers Watson to develop our total reward strategy. And one integral part of our strategy is the training, on-job training, and decent job training, whether in Kingdom.
So we'd like to hear your comments now, your questions to the speakers. I understand there are some roving microphones. Yes? Correct? Well, yes, let's have some roving microphones. Otherwise, please talk as loudly as you can so our panelists
My question is, we're talking about labor markets. We keep repeating that term, labor market, all the time. Do we have, we're focusing on the labor part of the labor market equation. Do we have the fundamentals for the market itself? Do we have a way to weigh the capabilities that we have in the market so the person can sell it, the person can develop, the person can see it as a career that they can follow, not necessarily through an academic institute, but really about an interest. If I love engineering, for example, I need to have the language. What does it mean to be an engineer? The access to that expertise in the market itself by forums like Ashram and these.
From being industrial countries to become more services, would be in Europe or in North America. They have transformed that knowledge into somewhere else. And I'll give you, for example, one.
We go and open jobs for 20. We have applications of more than 200, and most of them are coming with quality. However, because of the limited number of jobs that we have, we can't offer for higher everybody. And the question now, what is HADF is doing for that, and what's the Ministry of Labor is doing for that? Can minimum wages
we're talking about 300 riyal per month, and they are putting in their consideration these laborers are going to work in others illegally so they can cover the rest of income. For example, and it's very clear, the workers for cleaning company, they are spending more than 12 hours at our streets, and their production time is very limited, and they are getting more income from other people working in the open. I think this one should be covered by the wage protection system or something. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take two more questions and then we'll get to the panel.
And the question now, what is HADF is doing for that, and what's the Ministry of Labor is doing for that?
We come down for a short time.
We'll take them in batches of 5. Other players will be very large. Okay, let's have a question front. Microphone. Okay, we'll get the microphone to you, but we'll take another question elsewhere. One more. That's fine. Yes, please.
get a high quality job where they can develop. That's for the the King Abdullah Scholarship Program.
Just before we go to the next question, you want to make a comment as well?
Dr. Mujedi, I think what I would like to comment as well to what Teresa.
Certain areas, so certain specialties, and if that starts with employment. We know that there are a lot of work to be done, and a lot of work has been done, and I'm sure you have seen some of the outcomes of these initiatives and programs.
Okay.
I forgot the last one, but
So
I think you refuse on it, and you're signing for advisors for us on these initiatives. Basically, we're trying to develop the human resources professionals through certain key initiatives. Model, whether it's a PPP, To my presentation or to Ram's presentation, because it was green, Saudi Arabia was green on his presentation, so maybe Rafi can address this. But as you mentioned, the surplus is not because we have 8,000 million or 8 million, I hope we don't have 8,000 million, but 8 million, it's not in that, you know, category of male job seekers, you know.
And it's very impressive. It's very thoughtful, it's very comprehensive. So it might seem like a lot of initiatives, I agree, but it's a very thoughtful plan. I would suggest benchmarking.
8 million, it's not in that, you know, category of male job seekers, you know.
In developing a pool of, a national pool of...
One comment which is, I'm sure that you have done it, which, but I just want to confirm that which is, whatever initiative that you're doing, you will be able to sustain it for long term. Because lots of initiatives that we do, however, it will take within 2-3 years, we do not anticipate or do not look into the change management.
Enough people in the pipeline, enough people at the entry level coming and seeing that progression horizon clear to them, they will not continue the private sector. If you see, some people are leaving the private sector now in the first or the second year to the public sector, which is unfortunate. But usually with 3 or 4 years there, they sustain.
بعدها إن شاء الله سيبدأ فترة الصلاة.
Without a story to tell. So we are less than a year old club. What we have done is inviting prestigious organizations from telecom industry, from oil and gas, from advisory service to come and share us their acculturated experience in terms of how they brought these Western models, either from Australia, from China, or even from Saudi Arabia. We definitely will support that. The other one is to create a portal. We don't have a website. Advisory service to come and share it is with us. They are acculturated. Telling you frankly that we're having some difficulties, but at the end of the day, we're just like.
الاستراحة الأولى.
The other one is
إن شاء الله الساعة
ما